Hey everyone, thanks for joining. Seeing a few attendees start to trickle in right now. As we wait for the room to start to fill up, want to welcome everybody to the third installment of Startup Academy for this year. As a brief introduction of what Startup Academy is, for those of you who this is your first one attending, Startup Academy is really something that we started a few years ago in partnership with Cooley LLC. And the whole purpose of this series is to be by founders for founders, and it's meant to focus our attention on some of the best startups that are successfully building in the pre-K, K-12, higher ed, and corporate learning spaces. And we typically focus on one specific vertical, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But like I said, the whole point is having this be a very transparent discussion from the founders of the best companies and them talking about some of the bumps in the road that they faced in building their company and how they overcame those bumps. And again, for founders, meaning the audience here is people either who founded early on, who found startups early on, or who are working to build those startups and transition them to scale into very successful organizations. And today we're extremely excited to welcome two great speakers who can talk all about that. These are two startups very close to GSV. The first one being Uplimit, Zaid Badwan, who is the executive VP at Uplimit. He's joining us. He joined Uplimit from Coursera previously, which is both Uplimit and Coursera are GSV portfolio companies. And they have put together a great portfolio of enterprise customers from Databricks, Sony, Kraft Heinz, Roblox, et cetera, and we can get into it in a minute what Uplimit really does at its core. And then our second guest speaker today is Omer Glass from GrowthSpace, the CEO and co-founder of that company. And GrowthSpace is a crazy innovative company that also has over 40 enterprise customers, has scaled extremely quickly, and has logos from the likes of ServiceNow, Microsoft, PayPal, TELUS, et cetera. So I'd like to start by welcoming both Omer and Zaid onto the screen. Hey guys.
Hey everyone. Hey Zaid.
Hey. So we'll start by going through a brief overview, and I don't want to put too much pressure on you guys up front, but when we started thinking about who we were going to bring on for this this session, which is all about winning enterprise customers as an AI-driven L&D brand, you guys were a couple of the first companies that came to mind. And it's because we have spoken to so many executives in the learning space at some of these big enterprise companies, and without fail, Uplimit and GrowthSpace constantly come up as some of the tools that startups have given that have without fail just met the expectations and exceeded the expectations of these enterprise learning companies, and they're constantly amazed by how you guys overachieve. So for everybody in the audience, while there is no perfect playbook to building a startup, I would say Uplimit and GrowthSpace are pretty much as close as you could get, and we'll get into all of that in just a second. So before we dive into questions, guys, I would love if you could give a brief overview on what your companies do and how long you guys have been selling into the enterprise, and then we'll get into all the deeper details right after that. Zaid, do you want to start?
Sure. So nice to meet you, Omer, and thank you, Raymond, for having us. So Uplimit is an intelligent learning platform, and we use AI to unlock three key features that excite most of our enterprise customers that we'll be talking about. One is around meaningful learning, and so the age-old sort of unlocked potential that all of us in learning have been trying to figure out is how you create repeatable, really meaningful learning experiences that are engaging and social and actually drive application of that skill back on the job. And we know that that's doable, but we know that it's very time-consuming and painful to run these types of learning experiences. And so the other sort of like core value prop for Uplimit is we also unlock efficiency. And so we're using AI to strategically automate and use technology to scale what is often a very human-led program management experience. And then the third part is around innovation. And so how do you start to bring in things like AI role plays, AI practice opportunities, sort of flip the whole experience of scaled learning from being a passive sort of just watching a video to hands-on keyboard practice application burst experience.
Great. Thank you for that, Omer.
And great to be here. And so our growth space is a precision skill development company where we fit in with enterprises with their leadership development programs, aka making managers better or preparing people for future promotion. And what people need in both cases or problems is basically to be better at something, at a specific skill. And then when we started the company, we thought about like what's the best skill development experience you can have. So let's say now I'm going to the GSV event in April in San Diego, and I want to be better in my keynote delivery. How can I learn to deliver a better keynote? Probably you will already recommend like to find a TED Talk trainer, right? So they can help me. So we do that at scale. So we basically, the platform matches with AI between participants or small cohorts to subject matter experts who can basically teach them something in a very short learning sprint. And so that's high level what we do. And yeah, we started with smaller enterprise. Now we work mostly with the Fortune 500.
Great.
That's for space.
Great. Excited to get into all of that. So let's start with the very early days. If you think about before you start conjuring up all of these logos that you guys have from these amazing enterprise customers, what do you think are the biggest signs of momentum? And it could be a feeling, it could be specific metrics, but what do you think are the signs of momentum that tell a founder, tell an early employee, okay, enterprise sales is the way to go for our product, and it gives you kind of the green light to double down, making sure you have the right product team to build for the enterprise, making sure you have the right sales team to build for the enterprise. What is it that helps a founder figure out, okay, I'm not too early in doubling down on the strategy? Zay, do you want to start?
Sure. I mean, transparently, it was a very conscious decision that we made at Uplimit to focus on an enterprise business. I think like where I can separate out your question, Raymond, is sort of like, when do you go after commercial or mid-market versus enterprise level organizations? We, at the beginning of Uplimit's journey, also had a consumer business that we knew was like part of our dogfooding strategy of like learning best, in class cohort management, learning what sort of learners were looking for in their experiential learning experiences. But when we started to think about sort of bifurcating out, the commercial or mid-market and enterprise, we made the decision to actually go enterprise first, because we knew that would be the highest level of rigor we would be put through, from procurement to contracting to security. And if we could meet those expectations with some early trailblazers, then we could go down market in a much more strategic and seamless way. And I think, when we started to think about what repeatability looks like, to the earlier part of your question, it's when we started to hear similar pain points that our platform could solve across our go-to-market motion, versus, as I'm sure Omar will contest, and many folks on the call today, those early first year of conversations, even when we were in stealth mode, it was a lot of just very random, very different pains, use cases, things that folks were trying to solve. And we took that information as we started to think about what is the market needing in the future, and what is the product that we are best equipped to build and sort of go to market with.
Great. Omer, anything to add?
Yeah, so actually it's the complete opposite. So for us, we focused only on between SMB to mid-market companies in the beginning. And not only that, also tech. So we started a company in early 2020. So in 2021, over 2020, when we started to sell, it was also a big tech boom. So it was relatively easy to sell to tech companies, and also 500 people companies are much easier to sell to. I wouldn't think our product is mature enough to serve Fortune 500s, but small tech startups, if you come up with an innovative idea that can really, really solve their problem and is unique, so they take a bet on you. As I don't see that today, big enterprise RFPs, long processes, and also with a startup who needs momentum, now we're closing much larger deals in long sales cycles, but in the beginning, you need to close deals in 30 days, 60 days, right? So yeah, we did it opposite. First, it was clear that we're selling B2B. It's not basically a B2C product. But when we needed to focus on something, we said, okay, let's be the best selling to small tech companies. And then we moved to larger tech companies and then beyond tech. But like every time it was a phase, kind of like a tick box that we needed to pass.
Get it. And you guys both kind of touched on this idea. There's the old adage of no one gets fired for going with IBM, no one gets fired for hiring McKinsey. And that's especially true when a new technology is rolling out and people have bigger budgets and are expected to do more things with the advent of AI. So Zaid, you talked about these trailblazers that you were getting, and Omer, you talked about how in this environment, people aren't closing deals as quickly, especially with enterprises. People aren't willing to take bets on startups. So how did you guys identify those kind of trailblazers early on, the people who were going to take a bet on you and who would in 1 year, 2 years be your champion, and convincing those slower followers to come along for the ride? Omer, do you want to start this one?
Sure. So we went after, again, small companies. So we looked for the CHROs, the VP of Learning and Development, right? Like that's our space. And yeah, I think the goal there would be to speak with people, to get in front of them and understand their challenges and position ourselves as something completely different than everything they saw. And so that was basically the key. So I think we wanted people with influence so they can send the check. And we didn't feel it's such a big bet. Also, we started in the beginning with small pilots. So worst case, you lose $5,000, right? Like the risk is not so big. And we gave them even like a free pilot, just try it, like we subsidize them. And so just you're trying to reduce the friction to minimum and to come up with a potentially great value at a almost zero cost and risk, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Zaid.
Yeah. So, I mean, to the opposite of Omar's experience, we very intentionally went large enterprise to get us started. And what we did to identify, I mean, to Omar's point, you can't get a deal done without real pain. You can't get a deal done without real value. And so matching sort of the pain that an organization is experiencing with the problem that our platform solved sort of unlocks the ability to have those types of conversations. Most Fortune 500s are not early adopters. It's why you see most startups go like SMB mid-market to get started. But I think what we've been able to identify is this magic moment of individuals or buyers or strategic decision makers who are lumineers, who are trailblazers, and thinking about what are the products, what are the technologies that we can bring in to drive efficiency, and matching what our product does to what they're hearing from their CEO, which sort of unlocks their ability to take big risks. So sort of as AI was becoming at the forefront of everyone's thinking, what most chief learning officers or chief HR officers were hearing from CEOs was, how do you use AI to drive more efficiency? How do you become more lean? We're in a tighter budget season. And so how do you do more with less people, or do more with the same number of people if we're not going to see exponential growth? And positioning our value prop around that gave the protection to these early trailblazers or lumineers within these Fortune 500s to have the confidence to go say, hey, we're going to take a risk. We're going to bring in a startup. We're going to experiment with this because it solves a very acute problem that we're experiencing right now. And that really helped us close deals like Kraft Heinz and, SIE and, some of these bigger organizations that we're working with, these like Fortune 100 type companies. And we've learned along that experience is you can have a trailblazer, but if the company is not trailblazing or the industry is not trailblazing, it's probably not going to happen, right? So if somebody is a lumineer, but they're at Morgan Stanley, they're probably not going to be the first mover and shaker to take the risk on this. But if the company supports trailblazing and the person sees this as an opportunity for them to create a new category or even an opportunity to brand themselves with something new and exciting, you sometimes can have magic happen. And like Omar said, you start small. We were seeing pilots at about $25,000 to $50,000 to get people started, anchors on a clear use case, and then expands into much larger opportunities beyond that.
Right. And relatedly, I want to talk about, there's this internal debate, and it's spoken a lot in the consumer space, but I think it's similar in the enterprise space, this debate of building for your first million customers versus your next 10 million customers. And I'm sure it's the same in enterprise, building for your first 10 customers who, like I said, will ultimately be your champions, and versus, thinking about the next 50 customers who might just have lower expectations of what it means to have an incredible product, and maybe not lower expectations, but not as big of dreams in terms of what your product could do. So in thinking about that, how do you prioritize the feedback you get from those early customers, and how that informs your product strategy, how it informs the way you pitch to companies versus what you're hearing from sales calls with your next 50 customers? And Zaid, you could start this one.
I think I've been at later stage companies, I've been at earlier stage companies. I think the skill that most startups, I think, have to protect that is very apparent in early stages, listening to customers, and understanding deeply what sort of pains they're experiencing and what they need built, and balancing that against where you think the future market is going for your organization. And so it is this perfect marriage of what are our current early 10 customers saying they need, and what are we hearing from prospects we think our future ICP is, and then focusing the energy on the product that you're building and what you're sort of creating from your own organization's ethos. On the marriage of those two things is how I see sort of unlock. A lot of our early customers say, wow, Uplimit so fast at building exactly what we asked them for. And now as we grow and are scaling a bit, and we're still very early, we have to have more realistic conversations with our customers of hey, we don't see that being a repeatable need, so we're not going to invest this month or this quarter, but maybe next quarter.
Yeah. And Omer, your first 100 customers were a different ICP from your ICP today. So tell me, how does that relate to growth space?
So I think when you build something new, customers are not actively looking for it. Maybe they're looking for adjacent things to it. So you need to come to the market with a hypothesis about the problem you're going to solve and how you're going to solve it. And what we saw in the beginning is that we're not selling coaching, but everyone was looking for coaching because there were bigger coaching companies at the time and so forth. And there is some resemblance, but it's a completely different offering. But one thing we knew is that although they were looking for coaching, eventually you cannot win a market where it's not what you're doing and there is a clear market leader, right? So we had to be basically stubborn and make sure that although they're looking for it, especially from the prospects, you're kind of you're educating the market. And then with your existing customers, you're validating the result that it's actually good. And as we evolved, but we still stuck to it, right? So I think it served us, because if we're just looking for what people were looking for, it didn't exist, what we did, right? So we would never build what we did. We would build the, third or fourth coaching company, which is not really interesting when you're building a startup. So I think what my take on that is basically come up with a very clear hypothesis, and not necessarily everyone will look for it in the beginning, but just look at your customers and the value you're bringing there and try to validate the hypothesis, but do not move too quickly because they will just not look for it.
Got it. Okay, so taking this conversation and following the evolution of a company of an enterprise company, enterprise learning company, you now have your 5 to 10 enterprise customers, and it's all about how do you turn them into people who are going to vouch for you to other enterprise buyers. We know that the way people evaluate a year in is often what is the utilization of this product, and everything else starts to feel a little murky when you think about those other ROI metrics. So what do you guys use beyond utilization to actually determine, okay, we are digging deep, we are actually making sure that outcomes are being produced from our product, and then using those metrics that, like I said, can be a little murky and market them to future customers? Omer, do you want to start on this one?
Sure. So I think the holy grail in what all of us are doing is basically when you're proving that you can move a business metric, right? A business needle, because this is very like quantifiable. So customers know how to like monetize, right? Like to put a price tag on their business metrics. So I think if you can basically prove that with an A/B test, like a test group, control group, that by with your intervention, basically something that the business cares about moved, then this is the holy grail, like you won, right? And then it will be a very big contract. And from there we can go down all the way until utilization. So then you have like not core business metrics, but things like we measure with some of our customers, like their metrics of like managers' effectiveness, for example. So if we prove that we drive their manager effectiveness, so it means something. And from that, we use feedback of users on our platform. So we measure the direct manager feedback of the change that happened for the participant, and also participant feedback. And then you go all the way down to utilization. And you know what? Sometimes with some customers, utilization is so bad in our space. So even if you prove, hey, like we have 95% completion, basically, or like 95% utilization, it means something for some customers. So I think it's basically looking at all of this range. And of course, I would prioritize the business metric as like the go-to.
Got it. And Zaid, you guys starting off as like a very core learning product, like how do you guys think of it today, and how has it evolved over the last few years?
Yeah, I've always said, whether or not the learning leader has liked this, that utilization or even completion is a vanity metric. It's like eggs in your cake. You have to have it, right? Like it's just part of running a learning program. If people aren't showing up, nothing else matters, right? Like you can't grow your partnership, you can't renew your partnership if people aren't showing up to your platform. And so there's two things that we sort of focus on at UpLimit that have sort of unlocked sort of how we talk about value within our partner ecosystem. One is, to Omar's point, is application of skill back on the job, right? Like I use the term, Omar, golden thread that we're always trying to pull through is like, the learning is great, but if I can actually share that the person is applying the skill in their day-to-day job, whether it's a machine learning or an AI skill we've taught them, or it's a leadership program that we've taught them, if I can capture that, and I think, UpLimit's at like V1 of this, we're doing it via surveys 30, 60 days, 30, 60, 90 days after program completion. That is a really powerful metric. And then because our platform is like anchored in efficiency, we also measure efficiency metrics. So are our program managers spending less time running these programs? Are the instructors able to run more lectures and run more of these programs, meaning they can reach more of their learners, and we unlock, any capacity issues that a learning team has, helps in like anchoring us in the value that UpLimit is bringing in both, one, relieving the pain of the learning program, but two, unlocking good learning or meaningful learning is what we talk a lot about.
Got it. This next question, I'm going to give you guys kind of two paths that you could take. One of them being, the question boils down to, has AI affected your guys' business more on the back end, where you guys are using it to enable better sales, or and also like better outreach and better convincing of customers to buy your product or try out your product? Or has it really accelerated you guys in terms of actual product development and unlocking something where you could show a customer an AI feature within your product in a demo video, and then that automatically converts them from, okay, I was thinking about this, but now that it does something incredible, I'm willing to adopt it? Where have you seen AI impact your business more? Zaid, do you want to start here?
Sure. I'll actually take both relatively quickly so I don't take up too much time. I think organizations that have started post-pandemic or post-big AI revolution, evolution, whatever we're calling it, we have the luck and the opportunity to be AI native platforms, versus what you're seeing across most other learning platforms is like an existing platform that like AI has been slapped on top of, and a lot of debate of like, does that really help me? Does that actually bolster the product or not? And so from a product development perspective, I mean, it's just ingrained through and through our platform And it's allowed us to build product in a really strategic way. It's allowed us to solve like really strategic problems that weren't solvable by some of the classic learning platforms out there. On the go-to-market side, one, we have actually, like I have experimented with different like AI SDR things and you know, and I don't know, I think they're getting better still. And I think that they're much better today than they were a year ago when we experimented with these. But from like a true sales motion, I think what most, and Omar, be interesting to hear your perspective, we saw a lot of what we call AI tourism in our experience. And so this was, you know, whole L&D functions wanting to set up 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 demos, and want to, you know, learn as much as they can about the really cool functionality. And we are very much a shiny set of keys that they want to learn more about and upskill themselves. And so like the real sort of skill we had here was identifying like real pain points and being very rigorous upfront in these conversations around qualifying these opportunities to ensure that when we are setting up this time, you know, early stage startups, time is your most precious resource that you have. And so making sure that we actually would like flag opportunities that we thought were AI tourism versus real pains that we were solving for. Because you as a go-to-market team can circle and spend a lot of time talking to folks who just want to know what cool stuff you're building versus really trying to solve an actual problem with budget and, you know, approvals and willing to sort of rally for you as an early stage startup.
Great. Omer?
Yeah. So start with the AI tourism. I haven't seen AI tourism in Fortune 500 companies. I've seen it mostly in like large HCMs who want to see what's happening, right, in their industry because it's their space. And it's a space that's going through consolidation eventually. So I've seen it with like the big players there, but not in Fortune 5. And in terms of AI, I'm with you on like AI agents and stuff like that. I think AI has some cool features that help go to market. Like I enjoy reading the transcript from Gong, the AI summary, but it's not game changing for go to market, right? And yeah, it helps you write an email, it helps you make it more personalized, but especially when you're selling to large enterprise, I don't know, for us, it hasn't really moved the needle. In the product, it definitely moved the needle. Like the product is like it's the best technology in the world, right? It's like revolutionary. So it actually has the power to change your product if you're choosing it wisely. Like you said, it's not just adding a layer of AI just in order to say, hey, I'm using AI, but to actually change the core usage and the core functionality of the program, which is like the product, which is super cool. I'll give you an example. We like, think about it. We're developing skills, right? There are tons of skills. We have 1,100 skills on the platform. How do you choose? What skill do you need to work on, right? You can choose sales-related skills, AI-related skills, communication-related skills. It's big. And then AI is actually asking you and kind of like narrows it down very fast and connects it to your actual pain or the actual feedback you got from your manager, right? So this was a revolutionary tool for us. And then it goes into every aspect of the product. So product, definitely go to market. Also.
Great. Okay, I have one last question before I bring in our partner Naomi from Cooley to share some of her thoughts on these topics. And it's a pretty overarching question, but hopefully you guys can give quick answers. If you think about all of the hype at the start of the AI frenzy, let's say 2.5, 3 years ago, and these ideas that, you know, in just a year, 2 years, everyone is going to have an AI co-pilot by their side, or people are going to be barely doing any grunt work, and they're going to be able to focus on more fulfilling work as part of their job, the reason they got into their job. If you think about all of that hype and how fast people thought it was going to come to fruition, and you think about where we're at today, would you say we've fallen short, met expectations, or exceeded expectations? And then if you can make a prediction on what your answer to that same question will be 2 years from now, what would you say? Omer, do you want to start on this one?
Yeah, I think we've fallen short. I think it's funny because I'm now negotiating 2 contracts with customers who actually we're trying to convince them just to enable AI features. They're telling us, no AI here, right? Like large customers, I don't know if you see it in Up Limit, and we still have this product functionality to disable that just because we have like some resistance in the market. So there are actually some really cool tech brands, like I will not name them, of course, but think of like one of the best tech brands you can think about. And they're like, no AI here, right? So I think still the market is digesting this whole new thing, which is one indication why we've fallen short. And second, I think, yeah, like basically in the beginning, everyone wanted to do AI for AI's sake. So then, yeah, like why not put some prompting on ChatGPT and then call it AI product? And it doesn't really work like that. So I think there was like a lot of discovery in this space in general in order to really understand how it solves pains. And so I think it was relatively slow. And now with all the agent revolution, again, my prediction is that it will really excel because we're adapting to it. We're using ChatGPT, we're using AI, we're becoming more comfortable with adding your favorite AI technology as a sub-processor. So I think it will really excel in the coming 2 years.
That's fascinating to hear what you're seeing from some of the biggest, what we would think of as forward-thinking companies. Zaid, what are you seeing and what do you predict for the future?
Yeah. I actually think we're right where I expected us to be. Now that's different than what like the news was saying 2.5 years ago. And like, and I think like, if you're lucky enough to have been around enough to know that like, not that I was in the workforce yet, but like when the internet came in, everybody was like, here comes the end of the world. And then everybody got computers and they were like, here comes the end of the world. And then we all got phones and they were like, here comes the end of the world. And I just don't believe that as a society, we will ever see that level of sort of like change that is that rapid. But we know from the internet, computers, phones, all of these things that the change will happen. It will be slow. It will be meaningful. It will hopefully improve the lives of most of the people that are working day to day. And I think we're starting to see like, the power of like really targeted AI agents or platforms that are able to remove any of that burden that we're all experiencing from like an administrative, those repetitive things that like we all joke to each other about being terrible at doing and not wanting to do and didn't go to college to do XYZ. And from our perspective, like most of our learning people don't want to track attendance in a learning platform. They don't want to write personalized nudges to every single learner. They want something that can do it in a meaningful way. From a go-to-market perspective, I mean, I flagged for our board that our biggest risk going forward, not just for Uplimit, for every company, is lawyers catching up to AI. And I joke that there's two types: ones that have done too much reading and ones that have not done any reading at all. And when you get to the negotiation piece, they'll say things like no AI at all, and we're like, well, like, let's really unpack what your concerns are, because without the AI, it's just an automation platform. And so we're seeing a ton, like we have an amazing lawyer on our team who is educating our buyer lawyers of like, okay, this you should be worried about, this you shouldn't be worried about, and here's why. And so it really is, I think, gonna be a journey. I think 2 years from now, people will know, they'll know like, what's problematic, what's not problematic. I think we'll clean up some of this data privacy stuff that's happening, at least in North America. I think Europe is much further ahead of us on many of these things. And then lawyers will catch up and we'll be able to move faster on some of these contracts that right now take way, way too long.
Yeah. Great. And that's a super insightful answers from both of you. And also, Zaid, the way you ended your answer is a perfect segue to introducing our partner at Cooley, Naomi. Cooley has been a great partner of ours, both on these webinars as well as just in the work that we do every day with some of the best ed tech companies. So Naomi, we would love if you could get on the screen and share some of your thoughts on what we've been talking about today.
Hi, everyone. Absolutely love that segue. I'm sure you're eager to get back to the conversation, as am I, so I'll keep my comments brief. For those of you who aren't familiar with Cooley, we are a full-service global law firm. We have a long-standing, robust, early-stage technology practice and handle more private financings every year than any other law firm, along with providing the full suite of practices you might need as an early-stage company, from tech transactions to cyber data privacy to M&A. And relevant to our conversation today, I am privileged to be an attorney in our vibrant education and education technology practice. As a firm, we represent hundreds of education sector companies across the entire life cycle. Before and through law school, I worked in the education world, and that continues to be the lens through which I see my legal work. Similar to many of the comments you heard today, one of my mantras as an attorney is my goal is not to just know the law. I need to know my client's business. So I'd love to leave you with two takeaways. They're kind of outgrowths of this lens. First, when you're selling to enterprise customers, it is more critical than ever in our current environment to not only understand your business and their business, but also the legal framework in which each of you operate. And this is especially true when both parties are operating in a complex and heavily regulated space. To the earlier point of, no one ever got fired for hiring IBM, how do you get over the hump? And I would encourage you to think about one of the tools in your toolkit is being informed. I mean, this is very similar to the comment earlier. I loved it. How can you be informed about all the boxes your customers have to check on their side? Are they worried about IP ownership? Have an answer to that. Are they worried about data privacy and data security? Have an answer to that. And it's not as simple as saying, we comply with XYZ law. You actually have to understand what they're worried about from a legal perspective and why. And then second, and this is a related point, I'd really encourage you to change your perspective on what an understanding of the law and an understanding of regulatory frameworks can do for your company. Your ability to align your product, not just with your legal obligations, but also your customers, your prospective customers' legal frameworks, can be really helpful from a risk management perspective, but also a marketing advantage. It's not a hindrance if you go in with like eyes wide open. Like, it actually can spur your growth. So look forward to meeting many of you in the coming weeks at ASU+GSV, maybe in one of the places I'll be before then, San Diego, Bay Area, Austin. Please reach out anytime. But Raymond, back to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Naomi. Okay, we've gotten some great questions in the chat here. So I'll kind of have them, I'll go off pretty rapid fire on these. Let's start with this one. In what way, we talked about some of your early clients as serving as champions and promoters of your product. In what ways do you develop that relationship and leverage those relationships to have them be almost quasi salespeople on your guys' behalf, introducing them to some people who might be on the fence with your product?
I can jump in on that one because we're just really digging in on here. One of the things that we implemented that drives like real rigor in our sales process is defining out the whys. So like, why change, why now, why up limit when you're in early stage conversations with someone, it helps with that qualifying. And what we do with that information is as soon as we hear another prospect start to sound like the same whys and it gets to that repeatability motion, we connect those two. And then we let that person do the selling for us because they're dealing with the same pain. They're going to go through the same internal approval process. They'll talk about battling lawyers and all that good stuff that needs to go down. We're talking about AI. So once you start to hear similarities in use case and pain and those types of things, that's when we sort of unlock and connect those two.
Yeah, to echo that, super important. And actually, people who are happy with your products are usually happy to connect to other people and just sharing their sentiment. I'm personally happy to recommend products I like, right? So I think, yeah, I'm with Azaid on the use case. On top of that, usually people want to meet similar people to them, so similar industry, similar size. So yeah, give me a Fortune 100 manufacturing company, for example, and it really helps because, again, it's all about trust, right? And as you go up the ladder, the risk becomes higher. Like you said about the firing and McKinsey or IBM. So they're taking a leap, of faith when starting to work with you. And then if they hear someone senior from a similar company to them, singing their praises about you, it's much easier.
Naomi, any thoughts?
I know, I'll just ditto to everything.
Got it. Okay, another one we got. What, and you guys touched on this a little bit near the end, but I would love to get specific examples. What have been some of the unexpected roadblocks that you guys have run into as far as positioning yourself as an AI native brand? And, Zaid, you guys are really like AI at the forefront. You make it very clear this is an AI native product. Omer, you guys have great AI features, but I feel like you could also like kind of disguise yourself as like you don't have to have these. You mentioned you could turn these AI features off. So would love to hear both perspectives.
Sure. So I think for us, we're not disguising it. It's on our website. It's like the demo is like you see AI in the demo from the beginning, right? So it's not just features, it's core functionality, but we do enable the option to basically turn it off, and we tell them it will not work great. Like they said, yeah, like you can do whatever you want. It's your money. So our hope with these customers who choose to toggle it off, and it's very few. It's kind of like we have 2 customers basically, and probably the prospect I was talking about. So it happened, but it's relatively like the majority agree with that because they probably sign other AI products. So we're not the only one. So I think AI is common. It's basically Salesforce has AI and Gong has AI, and basically, Workday has AI. So when it's a standard, I think it's relatively easy to also brand yourself, and then you will find the edge cases, and you will need to choose what to do with them. Like, do you serve them without AI or not? So,
Yeah.
Zaid?
The AI thing is interesting. And then like, as we kind of go down this path and things mature, I realize that if somebody's using AI as an excuse, there's another underlying problem that they're not really talking about yet, because to Omar's earlier point, like they're like, oh no, we can never do AI. And I'm like, do you have Salesforce? Do you have Workday? Do you have any other SaaS tool ever created under the sun? Because they all have AI tooling in them today. And so someone somewhere gets these over the line. What I think we've really learned is, especially to our buyers, I think we all know this, it's a crowded space. There's a lot of questions on ed techs and the values they provide, and how do we prove the value and the ROI on these investments. And there were the 2017 to 2020 days where every company bought every ed tech ever created under the sun. And now there's like a culling of these things that happen. And so I think one of our biggest lessons learned in the early days was don't replicate anything. Make sure you're solving a problem that nobody else has really solved before. And it's a problem that is a sticky one that no one has thought of. So we didn't want to build a new Coursera. We didn't want to build a better LMS. We were like, that's not our interest points. We don't like, and so really focusing on what doesn't exist and then talking about the value that your platform adds will be a huge unlock for you.
Got it.
And I'll just add one more point from my perspective. I mean, every day we're helping clients work through, for example, in their customer contracts, and how do we describe AI? And it is surprising how often there's kind of a lack of articulation of kind of the goals of the use of whatever AI aspect of their product or platform, whatever they're trying to accomplish, and being able to not only communicate to that customer, but also for contracting purposes, right? To understand what exactly are we trying to do with this, so that we can articulate it in a way that makes sense to both parties. And it's surprising how much we need to work together to get out those outcomes and those goals, to be able to put them on paper, or for both parties to be able to have a meeting of the minds in terms of what they're hoping for and what you're able to provide.
Right. And Zaid, the way you ended kind of led perfectly into the last question here. if you had to be completely honest with someone who came to you and said, hey, all I'm hearing from enterprise customers as I'm trying to get my first view is that this is an era of cutting products and not adding products. And especially, you know, as you think of, okay, very specific pain points that you're trying to solve, what would you say to that person, especially thinking about the next few years and whether or not, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty on if these budgets are going to expand. So if someone came to you and asked you for advice there, what would be your response?
Yeah. You haven't found your product market fit. And if somebody, not that I think you can be Series E and still discovering your product market fit in many ways, but if you are in the category of this is culling season of products and tools that we've purchased, then you are repeating, you know, a build of a product that already exists. And even at the height of layoffs and cuts and budget restrictions, we knew organizations were still investing. Like we could see them do it with AI tooling. And so you're just haven't hit the pain that will sort of say, okay, yeah, we might be cutting these other products because we have 74 different content libraries out there. But this is a pain we haven't been able to solve for. And so there's certainly openness to bringing that in. And that's what, like, when someone writes a check, that's when you know, oh, I think I'm hitting on a pain point that other companies haven't yet. And if you can get multiple checks, either from the same company or multiple different companies, now all of a sudden you're hitting on something. We're watching our customers bring UpLimit in while they're cutting other vendors. And so it is just about what it is that you're bringing in, and is it more innovative and efficient, and will it save them money, and all those things is why you won't get looped into the, hey, we're just not bringing on more tools right now.
100%. I will yes say yes, and sometimes it will be your opportunity when they're cutting a lot of tools, and it's not only that you touch the pain point. Yeah, I'm like 100% with Zaid, but you can actually position yourself as the one tool that you should buy because it saves so much money. Like sometimes we have one of the companies you mentioned before replaced us with like 13 different vendors. So they say, yeah, we have 13 different vendors and we're just taking all of them out and bringing like us in because we're saving so much money. We're answering all their use cases in a much more efficient way. So yeah, for us, the economic downturn was even like a strong tailwind when like we tried selling to Fortune 5s.
Great. Well, this has been an incredible conversation. Like I said at the very start, there's no perfect playbook to building and scaling an amazing, successful startup, but UpLimit and Growth Space are as close as we've seen to executing those. Thank you, Zaid, so much for sharing your insights. Same to you, Omer. And Naomi, thank you to you and to Cooley for being amazing partners to ourselves at GSV, making these webinars possible. They're so valuable to so many founders, and also just supporting the EdTech community as a whole. For everyone who's unaware, ASU+GSV coming up in early April 6th to the 9th, and UpLimit and Growth Space and Cooley will all be there, and UpLimit having a fireside chat with the CLO of Sony and talking about how they have implemented their product, and then Growth Space as well with TELUS. And we're very excited to really see the product and dig deep into what it's taken to get so many of these amazing enterprise companies to adopt your guys' solution. So thank you guys so much, and thank you to everyone who's attended.
Thank
you so much.